Farhan, how are you doing? Great to have you here.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be
I'm
here.
really looking forward to this conversation because it's something quite different than what we've done before. We're going to touch the start on the real estate agency world, the world of property, something that I've always had a love for. My brother's an architect in London. Cool. In the UK, we used to flip properties, and I used to love bringing back that sort of that creativity and that passion and that's the real soul of a place. And I know that you've had a lot of success in this area, and it's something that you have really begun to own in the last decade or two.
Yeah.
So my first question is, what inspired you to get into the real estate agency world?
Yeah, I was in Canada for uni. I grew up in Dubai, then I went to Canada for uni, and then I came back in like 2005. So I've been doing it for a while, and it kind of was a family thing. We started real estate. It was in a very nascent stage at the time. There was like 6-7 agencies. And it was kind of, Dubai Marina had just come up and we saw an opportunity and we started building. And it's kind of, how a rising tide brings up all ships. So that tide came in and we were lucky at the right place at the right time. We grew out a team. So my first company was called New World Real Estate. We co-owned it with another partner. At our height, we had like 40 agents or 50 agents, I think. We had 2 offices, the whole spiel. But then that's another story of what happened to that. But yeah, that's how I got into it and what happened.
Yeah. And what's really interesting about it is that obviously it's an incredibly saturated market, and you were here in Dubai when it was becoming massively popular, right? So what made you different? How did you niche down? What did you do to make yourself an authority in that space?
Yeah, that's a great question. Back in the day, we were part of a small group that got into selling off-plan before it became cool. So there was a developer called Tanmiyat. They were from Saudi, and they were building living legends out in Dubai land, which is now like almost done. And we underwrote a bunch of those projects and we started selling them. So, we would buy it for a small percentage, and then on the promise that we would sell it. And then we would sell it, we'd make a little bit of margin and also the commission that came with it. So that worked out really well. And that's what kind of differentiated us, to answer your question. But nowadays, I don't see much differentiation. I don't know what your opinion is. I'd be curious to know, like in the market, of how one agent differs from another.
I think with any business, I think saturated is good. I mean, we had Daniel Priestley sat there not long ago, 2 months ago, and he was literally saying, if a market is saturated, that is brilliant, because that means people are already spending lots of money on there. And all you've got to do is tell your story a bit better. So I think that's the way to do it. So we'll get on to what you're actually working on later, which is incredibly exciting. I really want to talk about it because the whole storytelling, gamifying, understanding psychology and understanding what consumer behavior is doing right now is, I think, how you stand out. And I think, what you're touching on there is that in property, especially in Dubai, but also in the UK, there's not a lot of stuff that's different. The one that we sold our last property through in the UK that was different or that was disruptive was it was called Purple Bricks, right? So that was a bit of a different way of buying property because you did it all yourself, really, and then you could discuss, sale prices and stuff. What was your opinion on that sort of disruptive business?
I'm curious to know how that works. Sorry. So there was no agent in the process?
With Purple Bricks, there's no agent in the process, no. So you literally apply to them and they'll put all the ads up, so you get a bit of the ad spend from them. They'll do the pictures, and they also can take people around your property for you.
Do you pay commission?
You don't pay commission. No, there's no commission.
It's like a flat rate.
Yeah, and at the time it was only about £800, and you could spend an extra £200 or something if you wanted them to take the guests around the property. But if you did that, you had to then use their solicitors. That's how they make the money. So there's a really different...
I love that idea. That's kind of like our North Star as well. I have a whole business plan of how we could do that in Dubai. I think it's hard to do because, as you say, it's such a saturated market. On last count, I might be wrong, but 60,000 agents in Dubai. Billion dirhams worth of real estate transaction a day is what I heard, is the last stat that I know of. So it's a very competitive market. And I don't know if there's a space for something like that I don't want to speak for others, but I think it would be very challenging to do something like that. The way we wanted to do it was Viewit would be, I guess I don't want to skip ahead, but Viewit would be the discovery platform, and then you would send out riders to open up doors instead of having the agent. And the whole thing is done from an admin on the back end. Does that make sense? So like any question, any answer. So I suppose, sort of like the solicitor. We don't really have that in Dubai, as you know. But any question you have in the interim, you can speak to a call center agent, someone that's educated that knows the process, because everything is a process in Dubai, very well regulated by the land department. So if you have any question, we can answer it legally. And then the transfer is done with one of our staff, and you pay a very flat fee. So it's kind of like the Talabat / McDonald's of real estate. Yeah.
But it's still, so I guess what you're taking out there is you're putting in, the work on the person. So they do save a bit of money. Like when we looked at Purple Bricks in the UK, you save the money, but you've got to do more work. So it depends if you work from home, if you don't work, whatever it is. The difficulty, I think, is that it depends on what value the property is you're selling.
Yes.
If you're selling a property that's £1 million plus, maybe even less than that, I think you need someone who's an expert in the area and can talk about the property in a way that maybe you can't. Because I think what you do find if you take someone around your property yourself is, in my opinion, you start showing them things that you think are impressive and they don't care about. You start to lose their interest. You're telling the wrong story to the wrong person, which is kind of classic failure marketing, isn't it? You know, the best thing about a failed marketing campaign is that no one saw it. Whereas you can't do that if you're showing them yourself. I want to take you away from property just for a second.
Sure.
Because I want to set the scene a bit more with your entrepreneurial background, because what we're going to touch on is some really cool entrepreneurship that you've done and are doing. And I want to hear a bit about the body shop in Pakistan, because you are literally Mr. Body Shop in Pakistan, right?
We have 25%. So the family that owns the agency for Body Shop in Dubai, in the UAE rather, or in Dubai, sorry, in Dubai only, is a family that we're very close to, the UAE national family. We started speaking to them to bring it to Pakistan, and we were a sub-agency of the Dubai operation, if that makes sense. And the idea was that the goods coming into Dubai continue shipping them, through onto Pakistan, to Karachi, which is also a port city. And that's what we did. So we opened with like 5 shops. Then obviously all franchises have a very set way of how you have to grow. So they have these milestones every, 18 months you have to grow from 5 to 10 to 15 and so on. So we grew at our height. We started in 2007. Then we were suffering because with Pakistan, you kind of like swimming against the tide with inflation and dollar reserves, and anyone that's Pakistani that's listening will understand. There's a lot of potential, but because of the economy and politics and so on, it suffers a bit. But so because of these reasons, in 2018-19, we were like, should we continue? Then I thought to set up e-commerce, like a door-to-door kind of thing. And we did that. And now it accounts for about 25% of our gross sales. And we had, I think, over 40 shops nationwide. But now we have, I think, 29 or so. Yeah, but we're 25%. And someone else, we're not managing it. We're like the director. So every month we check in, see how it's going, what we can do. But yeah, it's fun.
What I really like about that, and we could do a whole other podcast on franchising, because I have no idea about franchising. It'd be really cool to talk about it. But what I think is interesting there, was why I wanted to bring it up, is not only the entrepreneurial sort of spirit and flair that you've shown there, but also a lot of that is 75% of what you're saying there is physical stores, which is down to location, which is down to property. That's what I was interested in. So what's that process about, going or analysing, researching and going, this is where we're going to open a new store? How does that process work?
Yeah, we have scouts that go out. So there's, again, Pakistan, safety is the main thing that you want to be cognizant of. So, and each city has 1 or 2 big major malls. So we're always, our flagship store in each city, like in Dolmen in Karachi, Centaurus in Islamabad, I forget the Lahore one. So we're in all those shops. And then you want to find safe pockets where people, especially women, are comfortable and safe to walk around. And then it's kind of, it's common sense. Like, is it safe? Are there guards around? And, has there been any sort of history of assault in that area? And if that's all those boxes are checked, we open. And then we see how it does. Like, that can all be well and good, but then the footfall has to be there. People have to kind of be, oh, what's that? I need to pick up a cream or a deodorant or whatever it may be. And then they step in and purchase. And
compared to, I know you spend a lot of time in the US. Compared to the US market, is it selling a very, very similar product, identical products? Is it a different sort of...
Oh, it's the same. That's a very good question. I think it's the same. It's the same as Dubai. So every body shop has to be exactly the same. So now that if you've walked into a body shop recently, you see like the taps around the middle bit. We had to do that for every shop, which was really expensive. So the outfitting and making sure that body shop's happy with us is very important. We have to appease them.
Yeah.
But every shop is the same. And the products, I would say, I don't know. It's a good question. I would say probably it is more attuned to that market.
Yeah.
But I don't know granularly.
No. I think it's really interesting. It makes you think of the film The Founder, with McDonald's. And Great film. Yeah. And we did a bit about franchising at uni and just like how interesting it is, or how incredible it is that you can make one outlet look exactly the same as another. Yeah. And obviously there's economies of scale that make it more effective and cheaper and better way of doing it. But I just think the research and analysis that goes in behind it, and also the risk that goes into that, because you've obviously, it's almost like you've got an investor on your shoulder going, I hope that works for you.
100%.
I think that's really interesting. I'm going to take you full circle now. I want to touch on that bit because the property side is really interesting to me. Yeah. I want to bring you back to property in general. Ideally, looking at the UK, US and UAE property markets, I would love to hear your thoughts on what you think the market's looking like right now. What are the issues? What are the positives? What's it looking like on the horizon?
The stats are failing me at the moment, but we're on a day-to-day level, we're kind of seeing a little bit of a slowdown in terms of volume of transactions. Last quarter was insane. Last Q3 and Q4 of 23 was fantastic. There was an Economist or Arabian Business article about how there's a sort of an exodus of Russian investors. Yeah. So those that were buying in Q1, Q2 because of fear and whatever their motivations are because of what's happening in their country, that is starting to kind of shift, and they're selling and moving money back to Russia. I think they're seeing that a little bit more as a safe haven. I think because of that, off-plan sales have dried up slightly, and ready properties are coming back. But in terms of supply, demand, I think the market's still robust. Do I think that there's too many agents in the market? I think so. Like on a granular level, whenever you do a deal as an agent, 7 out of 10 times there'll be another agent involved. And as you know, it's all commission based, right? So if you don't make money, you literally don't eat that month. So if you do a deal and you don't have the direct listing or the direct buyer, which as I say is majority of the time, then you're sharing that commission. So it could be 50K, it could be 100K. More often than not, it's like 40K, 40, 50K. And half of that goes, so let's say it's 50K, 25 goes to the other agent, 25 is with you, and then 12 and a half normally you give to your company, which is 50% of what you earn. So you walk away with 12 and a half. So it's like keeps cutting down until you get a sort of small sliver of the pie.
I see. Okay, so it becomes a volume game.
Yes,
sometimes.
Definitely.
Just to set the scene of the Dubai sort of real estate market as well at the minute. If people are listening to this and don't know Dubai very well, there's actually, everyone might know the Palm Jumeirah. Yeah. There's actually 2 palms, isn't there? There's Palm Jebel Ali, and is it twice as big? It is huge. Yeah. And how fast did those houses go? The off-plan houses, they went in like a morning. Didn't they?
A company that I work with very closely, they did really well. I think 2 fronts were sold within 3 hours each. The minimum price was 20 million. Dirhams, yeah.
So you're looking at £4.5 million.
Yeah, $4.5 million.
$6 million.
Yeah. The logic is that the prices today for a similar sized house, but not as nice, like these are sort of modern contemporary, for an older style in the Palm is like 35-40 million dirhams, so it's almost double the price. So that was the logic of launching at that price, and then you pay 10% now, and then after 3 months you pay another 10% until 2020. Sorry, I don't want to get this wrong. I think it's 2028 that they're gonna have these villas ready. What are we now? 4? Yeah. 8. So 4 years.
Well, I guess there's a massive risk because that's what they said last time, wasn't it? You invest and then nothing happened. It stalled for a long time. Is that an issue in property in the UAE in general?
Great question. Nakheel went through a couple of cycles of this. Initially, Nakheel. So there was a poem with water homes. If that makes sense, it's such an outlandish prospect. But they're going to do a poem that looks like with water homes that you could see from the sky around the Palm Jebel Ali.
Oh wow,
that makes sense. Yeah, and that project was then offloaded. Like they're like, this is untenable. We can't do this. But yeah, I mean, they have all gone through a kind of a cleansing, and they're all on point now. Emaar, Nakheel, Dubai Properties, Miras. So whoever's in the game is here to stay, in my opinion, especially the government-backed ones. They know what they're doing. They've got a good understanding of finances, resources, and the provisions that you need to make to get this. So building the palm, while it is expensive, getting utilities onto the palm is expensive, like water, sewage, electricity, and maintaining those services in perpetuity is also very expensive, and it's tough to do. So. Yeah,
it's quite an incredible feat of engineering, isn't it? I always think when you drive onto the palm, sometimes your GPS doesn't realize you're on the palm. It thinks you're 10k out into the sea. Yeah. It's incredible. I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned there that there's 60,000 active agents in Dubai alone, or was that the UAE?
Dubai alone.
Dubai alone. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So, how do you see the selling of properties different across the three countries that I've mentioned: UAE, UK or England, and the US?
Great question. I think the UK, we've had a lot of people from the UK come over to become sales agents in Dubai. I think the biggest problem is the commissions are very small in the UK, and it takes a long time to close a deal. Whereas deals can close within a week in Dubai if it's cash to cash, but it can take up to 4 to 6 weeks maximum. Time is of the essence. Whenever there's an MOU, like the agreement between the buyer and the seller, the amount of time that's on the MOU is a very contentious point. Like, is it 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? Because it's a transit city, it's a transient place. People are always flying in and out. So people are always in a rush to do deals. So I think between the UK and Dubai, that's the biggest difference, time and money. US charges up to 6%. I just learned a lot of stuff about the US, if you're interested to hear.
Definitely.
Yeah, so the biggest portal in the US is called Zillow.
Yes.
And behind that is called the MLS system, the multi-listing system, where by default, if you have a listing, it goes onto this government system, for lack of a better term, and those are all pulled to Zillow by default. 100% of those listings are pulled to Zillow. But only 3% of agents are paying for leads. So the other 97% are actually circulated to the 3%, if that makes sense, on Zillow. And there's not an upheaval, but there's a resistance now against these bigger, larger portals that are kind of consolidating these leads. And when you call, there's a really cool SNL skit, if anyone wants to, just type in Zillow SNL, where you call and it goes to a call center. It doesn't go to the agent. And then the call center decides through the algos who to forward that lead to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of need to be in with that call center as well, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to be paying, and you have to have the listing that matches the lead, and it goes through a whole system. That's how Zillow works. There's a great podcast by the CEO of Homes.com who's trying to subvert this on Spotify. But yeah, it's really interesting how the system in the US works. It's very antiquated. There's really an appetite for disruption there as well.
What is also quite interesting, I think, and I don't know enough about this really to comment, but the marketing in real estate is, to me, really interesting, because a lot of it is personal brand. Like, you look at the biggest people in the US, there's loads of shows on Netflix about selling homes, and the guy who came to visit Iman Gadzi here, Ryan, I can't remember his name.
Oh yeah. The with the white hair.
That's him. Yeah. He's massive in the world of property, and his office is in New York. Yeah. But it seems to me to be like they have two different people. They have estate agents, and then they have brokers. Is that right? Where you can go to an estate agent and say, I'll look after all of your homes as well. And I get a small commission if I bring someone to you. Yeah,
I think, what I know is that there's commercial and residential. There's a big difference in these two worlds in the US. So for commercial, it's a different sort of, it's not as cut and dry as in Dubai, where you sell them an office. You have to actually manage it for the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years. But yeah, brokers and thing, I'd have to look into that a little bit.
Yeah. But I mean, we still know that personal branding and marketing is incredibly important in property, which is so interesting, because when you go onto a platform, so for me, the only one that I'm really aware of is Rightmove. That's the one that I would use in the UK, or maybe there is another one that I've forgotten what it's called. But you go on there, and it's very much like in the UK, we have a platform called Auto Trader. Yeah, very similar. This is Auto Traders for cars and bikes and whatever. Yeah. And Rightmove is for where you buy your houses. Yep. And it's very much it's almost a 2D, for lack of a better term, way of using it, because you literally you have to already know what you want, and you scroll according to your filters, if it's a car, if it's a house. And then it's like, okay, and now you just have to ring the agent, and hopefully then you come off that platform and you start to sort of work with them, I guess. Yeah. I want to talk to you about how you're disrupting that entire sort of way of buying things with your current tech company, which is super exciting. Yeah.
So we started in 2020. I was running an agency at the time, and we couldn't. So COVID hit. COVID's like a bad dream we're still getting out of.
I know.
Yeah, it's like it never happened. And anyway, But it did happen in a very big way. So Dubai was under severe lockdown. Were you around in COVID?
No, well, we were in the UK.
Yeah. But you didn't have like state mandate where you can't leave the house.
Yeah, we had.
Oh, you
couldn't
did?
leave the house, yeah, at all.
You couldn't leave the house.
I think it was similar to Dubai in the UK. I didn't think it was quite as strict as Dubai, but ours went on for a lot longer.
It was not police enforced or anything.
Yeah, it was police enforced.
It was?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So yeah, in Dubai it was the same thing where like, if you had to send an SMS to the police just to leave your house.
Oh, it wasn't like that.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Oh, wow, okay.
That's what I mean. Like
Yeah.
it was insane. And can you imagine like you're an agent and you have to go out and do viewings, otherwise there was no, what did you call furloughs?
We had furlough, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
we didn't
government pay. If anyone who's listening doesn't understand, in the UK we had furlough, so you could not work for a period of time, and they'd pay something like 75% of your salary, and it would drop down over time as an incentive for companies to take you back to work.
Yeah. So I think that is something great. I mean, we all criticize the government, but the fact that the UK government did that is such a great thing.
Mm.
They really allowed people. So we didn't have that in Dubai. So you had to like think of something. So we would, as an agency, we would send SMSs to the police and say, oh, we're going to go out and get some milk or bread or whatever. But then we'd actually go to take a video of a listing and then send it to our clients who we had through our sort of previous marketing on Property Finder and Viewit. And we'd send them the video and say, look, this is what we can do. You can't leave, we can't leave. Here's a video, do you like it or not? Show it to your husband and your wife and your children and so on. If you like it, let's move forward. And to our surprise, we started closing deals. Like people would pay us sight unseen or would book the deal sight unseen. So they would send us a 10% or the 5%, whether it's rent or sale. And this proved to be a very strong validation for the idea. And then we started looking. We said, well, how many videos are there on Property Finder? How many videos are there in Viewit and on Dubizzle and a couple of other portals? And we saw that less than 6% of listings are immersive, quote unquote, so 360 or video. Mm-hmm. So I started fooling around and building a little app on my MacBook, which can take information, shoot a video, and then upload it to a website. Then we sort of started to build it out. I got a team, and then long story short, fast forward like 3 years later, and here we are.
So what did you see that was different? Because in the UK, a similar thing happened because we actually moved house during COVID. So we had to go through that whole thing where they would send you a video, you had to book an appointment, but you had to be really serious. You had to show all your documents and your funds. And your COVID stamps and stuff. Yeah, exactly. Your vaccinations, that's it. Yeah. But the videos haven't really, I haven't been there for a couple of years, but hasn't taken off as much as I can see it here because the videos were just sort of an estate agent walking around the house with a phone and just sort of sending it to you. There was no depth. There was no real understanding of what's going on. So what's different with Viewit?
It's the same thing, to be fair. It's an agent that walks around the house, but we train them on how to do it.
Nice.
And we, what we're doing next is really cool. So we have a bunch of stuff. We have we're working on something which can explain the video as you walk through. It's just based leverage on OpenAI's work. So OpenAI has a framework where via the API you can, it'll explain what it's seeing in the video. So we can add that as well. Stability, like the kind of idle sway, is an issue if you don't know how to shoot. But if you do, then that makes a world of difference. There's a whole host of things you can do with an iPhone 12 and up, which people, if they learn how to do these little changes as they shoot video, it makes a huge difference.
Well, that was going to be my question. If an agent is going to put a video onto the app, which effectively the way you described it to me is something like the TikTok of property, right? It's almost like gamified, it's fun, it's, like I said, it's completely different to Rightmove because it's like a fun way of doing it, which is exactly what we want these days, right? With less attention span and more desire for dopamine. So how do you ensure the quality of a video that's going up there? Is there a process or is there it's the way that you teach them?
Good question. No, at the moment, because we're small, we need to aggregate as much as we can. That's our thing that we need to do. So we take videos from anywhere and everywhere. So to be clear, we have two markets right now. We have viewit.ae and viewit.pk. In AE, we have around 400 or so listings, which is not great. But it's hard to scale in Dubai, and I can go into that. In Pakistan, we launched as an A/B test to see, look, let's launch somewhere where it's cheaper, where there's less regulation, where there's a bigger population. Obviously, the economy is not as robust, but let's see. It turned out that turned out really well. So we have now almost 4,000 monthly active users, about 3,000 live listings on the site on viewit.pk. And that's growing really well. And there, it's all sorts of videos. I mean, you don't get the kind of quality that you would get in Dubai or the UK. But people respond to it. So I think the distinction to be made is like, is it better than pictures and text? And in our thesis is that, yes, it is. So what I always say is a bad video is still better than like 10 decent pictures. Because you understand the flow, the dimensions, how you would fit into the home. And then you could also explain it. We encourage our agents to like do voiceovers, add captions. Everything that you see on TikTok that keeps you glued to these platforms, we want you to do for this as well. Because that's what works, clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's understanding that psychology, isn't it? I spoke to, last week I spoke to a guy called Aaron Knightley who on the podcast, and he's grown his TikTok in 14 months to over 250,000 people. Wow. And he said the way he did it was consistency, but understanding the psychology of what people are looking for. Yeah. So in this sort of state where you're looking at, over 4,000 users actively a month, I guess the biggest job for you as a sort of tech startup is how can you understand what they're looking for, and then what's the issue they're going to get to? Because in the UK, the biggest thing about property from everyone that we know is that it's so convoluted. Yeah. So you sell your house, you have to do the pictures, you have to do, all the energy stamps, all this kind of stuff. Then you've got to try and sell it. People have to come into your house all the time. So you've got to, so that process, I know you're not changing, but that's the thing you've got to make them want to forget about by using your app, if that makes sense. So it's almost like gamifying. It's more fun for them.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other side of that is the agents, right? So whenever I've looked at Viewit, I thought to myself, if I was an agent, I'd be using this as if it was TikTok.
Yeah.
Because then I presume at some point, if it's not already there's an algorithm that's going to say whoever likes that agent the most is going to show the most. And therefore, I'm going to make more sales than anyone else and take all the listings. Is that something that you're really working on?
Yeah, so these are bold things that we want to do. I'm glad you brought it up. We want to change. So at the moment, there's two ways that you look for a listing is discovery and viewing, right? So the discovery part, which you very aptly brought up initially, was you have to know where you want to look. This is something... For some reason, like innovation has escaped the prop tech world, and we've kind of gotten used to things the way they are. But if you go to Zillow, to Rightmove, or in fact, if I ask you, picture a property portal, you probably picture the same thing that I'm thinking of. Yeah. It'll be like a happy family and then a search bar, that's it. But we want to change that, given that 90% of internet traffic in 2023, 90% was video.
Wow.
Which is crazy, right? But again, less than 10% generally of listings are video. So there's a mismatch here. So we are building the literal TikTok of real estate. So you continue seeing videos of listings, and as you scroll, it figures out what you like, and it subconsciously brings up listings that you may or may not like. Yes, a discovery and viewing is what I'm saying. So the discovery process is what we're flipping on its head. Instead of you kind of saying, I want something in downtown Dubai with a 3-bedroom and so on. You can do that still on our platform as well. You should organically come up to that listing, which is a different way of doing it. And then viewing obviously is that every listing is a video. So instead of looking at 10, 15 pictures, you look at actual video tours of the property.
It's funny because literally last night we were looking on Property Find. No, we were looking in the UK actually. We looked just to see what the prices cost in London at the moment when I was doing the research for this. And I was thinking to myself, we just put in a price and a rough area of London, and we were just scrolling for no reason.
Where? On Instagram?
No, we're on, what's it called? Rightmove.
Oh, yeah.
Rightmove, the UK.
Yeah,
I get confused between Rightmove and Property Finder in Dubai.
Yeah.
And you're just scrolling, and you're not stopping.
Yes.
And we were like, why are we not stopping?
That's a great point.
And it's because, you know more than me, but I presumed when I was doing it, I was thinking, it's because nothing's catching my eye, because I'm used to scrolling and looking for something, that content, that engagement, that intrigue.
Yeah, I literally want to jump up and down that you said that. That's so true. How old are you? Sorry if I may ask.
Say again?
How old are you?
28.
That's the demographic that we want to target.
Okay.
You guys don't know how to use, I'm older, I'm much older than you. But we grew up on this outdated format. That's not how people use technology today. They interact with their phone all day long, and this is what they know. It's just literally in your muscle memory now.
Yeah.
Keep going, double tap or comment or share or whatever. And that's exactly the experience that we want to bring to real estate, which no one has done. Although, actually, one company has done it. Shout out to them. They pivoted away, unfortunately. They're called Playhouse. They're YC backed. Do you know YC, Y Combinator? Yeah. So they started in California. They had huge promise. They raised, I think, $1 million. I don't know what happened. They changed it to something like They gamified it. Yeah. So they made it like you guess the price and You kind of play games on a listing and stuff like that.
That wouldn't interest me though. If I'm like trying to buy a house or rent a flat, that would just be annoying.
The thing is to continue to iterate based on user feedback. So I would really like to, after this podcast, like give you the app and play with it and see what you think and what we could add to make it more sticky. Because that's exactly. You're not stopping. Why aren't you stopping?
Yeah.
You know, every agent wants you to stop on their listing, right?
Yeah.
But they're not putting in the effort. Like pictures are just like take 10 static pictures, put them up, and then hope for the best. But with a video, you have to kind of put in your personality, tell a story.
You need to. Do you know what? You almost need like a content. You need like a content creator academy. For the agencies.
Yeah,
we'll talk after.
Yeah.
But what I think is really interesting, and I'd love to hear from you, is that what you're effectively doing, you're doing a tech startup, which is incredibly stressful, right? That is already a really big thing I'm really, really interested in.
Yeah.
You're also thinking about B2B, because you need estate agents to use this, but you're also thinking about B2C, because you need people to buy from the said estate agents so that you then make some sort of commissions or something your way.
Exactly.
So how are you in your sort of product teams or in your scoping working through that?
That's a great question. B2B is what we're doing. So we're dealing with agencies. Literally, we had 2 meetings today, both of them canceled. Agents in Dubai are notoriously difficult to get a hold of.
Okay.
But yeah, B2B, because for the most part, agencies make the decision on marketing, depending on the size. So if you go to a 10 agent team, normally the owner decides everything. Now you scale that to 30 agents, they might have a marketing manager who then says, well, we're spending 30,000 on Property Finder, 28,000 on Bayouth. We have maybe 3,000 dirhams left in our budget. We need to see this many leads. They're a lot more calculated on how they want to go about things. So we have to cater it to that person for the bigger team. So to answer your question, it's very malleable. Like you have to do one thing for one team, another thing for another team. But our strategy is not to kind of throw things at the wall and see what sticks. We're going with the smaller guys first. And then we learn from them and move to the middle, and then we learn from them and then hopefully move to the big ones. And there's many big companies in Dubai as well. But we don't want to burn ourselves yet until we've kind of walked the path, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool. And also I think there's so much credibility in you that you've been for multiple decades in this industry already. So you know the issues. It's then changed. You've changed it and pivoted because you've had inspiration because of COVID.
Yeah.
And then you've looked at a way to sort of establish yourself as, you know, an authority in the changing world that is not only property, but just tech in general.
Yeah.
And I want to touch again on the tech side, right? So there's so many businesses you could have gone with.
Yeah.
Why did you go, I'm going to try and create the Netflix of tech prop? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a problem. It was literally to solve a problem. I didn't have any aspiration to like be a big tech guy, whatever. I just wanted to solve the problem that we had. So I said, this one video is going to one person, right? The same video is sitting there on your phone. You're going to delete it after, you know, when you run out of memory. Why not put the same video up on a platform, see what happens? And that's exactly what we did, and people start to engage with it. There was a real, the bigger need is from the user, from people like you who are looking for listings. And that's the kind of, those are the people that we really want to make happy, because you guys drive the market. As much as agents want to steer it, you're the actual rudder on the ship. So yeah, we want to play it to our audience, which is young people who have a lot of money. So there's another statistic. There's $60 trillion of wealth coming from in the US, coming from the boomer generation, like one generation above mine to your generation. So there's a lot of money that's going to be transferred over the next kind of 15, 20 years. So your generation is going to have a lot of purchasing power on how you buy. And the biggest asset class is obviously real estate. And yeah, we're basically building an app for your generation.
I think it's so cool. I really like it. I'm interested in why you think it will change. So obviously we know that the psychology of the consumer is changing. Yeah. We know, like you said there, that the asset class of property is massive. If anyone makes a great deal of money, that they almost guarantee they're going to put it into property somewhere as safe as they can imagine, like central London or something that's not going to change. Yeah. So how do you see the business scaling to help with that? And I know you're talking a lot about user testing, which I'm interested in. But how do you see it scaling to be like, okay, this is the only place that I want to put my property? Or maybe it doesn't need to do that. Maybe it just needs to be well established.
No, ideally, so we have 2 apps. We have a listing app and we have the TikTok app. So the listing app, we've made it as frictionless as possible. That's another problem we want to solve. It kind of all came together and we had to do it. It's kind of those moments. But at the moment in Dubai, I don't know how it is in the UK, but at the moment in Dubai, there's no way to list a property via a mobile application. There is now one or two apps that have come in the past couple of months, but when we were building it, you had to be on a desktop, on a web app, if that makes sense. And then it takes around 40 minutes to list a property. Like you have to put in the location and all these other bits and pieces, which you don't really need. And normally that's given to the admin to do. So we built a mobile application that allows agents to very quickly list. So to answer your question, we want to make the listing or the uploading process really fun. I think that's the thing that people don't think about in Instagram and TikTok. But like uploading or making videos, editing, adding captions and kind of making it stand out is super fun and engaging. Yeah. And that's the kind of psychology we want to tap into as well.
That's a really good point. Yeah. The sort of the frictionless nature of being able to sell your own property. So could I sell my own property in that, or do I still need an agent?
In Dubai, you need an agent. You need a permit number.
I see. Okay. Yeah. But in the UK, if it was in the UK, I could just list myself.
I don't. Do you have an MLS in the UK? Do you have to have like a permit to list something on Rightmove?
I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
Hopefully, someone listening will tell us.
Yeah, tell us.
But that would be. I mean, if you do need that, then obviously it becomes an issue. But what you're saying there, and I'm thinking about this as like a content creator sort of space, slightly differently. So I'm like, how would you get someone to keep posting? If I'm maybe I'm an agent, so I do have the MLS and I can post, and I want to put loads of properties on, and I want to be known as like the guy that does penthouses in Dubai.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be like, what stops you from posting onto Instagram? Well, if Instagram was really hard and annoying to upload stuff, and I had to, if I wanted to tag that I'm in the podcast studio, I had to actually write it in and find it on a map rather than clicking current location. It would be really annoying, which is why Facebook Marketplace has done so well, because you can sell something in 5 minutes.
Yeah, but Facebook Marketplace is super saturated, and there's a lot of strange stuff on there. We want to be sort of dedicated to real estate. And to answer, we get asked this question all the time: what if TikTok wants to do Instagram? They could, by all means, but the difference is that you can search on a very granular level as to where you want to search. We're going to have a map feature as well, because people love the map, especially in the West, in the UK and the US. But yeah, you can search. Like in Instagram, I don't know if you've done this, but you can't type in like, I'm looking for a 2-bedroom in Dubai Marina, which is less than 250,000 rent. You can't really do that, but you can do that on our platform. And you can go through the same experience where you continue scrolling, you stop, you can even comment on the listing and share it with your friends and family. And
no way. Can you add music?
Yeah, well, not on the listing app yet. Like, this kind of stuff is it's like the next logical thing to do, but it's super technically expensive, and in terms of like tech development is very heavy. So we're going to do it when we raise our next round.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You're in that first sort of, you'd say you'd be on MVP though, right? You're in like...
Yeah, we're live. We're revenue generating in both our countries.
Oh, there you go.
Go check us out. Viewit.ae, viewit.ae.
I know, I've seen it. It's so cool. So I guess what's interesting, if people are listening who are thinking about a tech startup or thinking about a way to grow their business, what's your sort of plan, or how have you already looked at or approached customer acquisition? Because like you said, there's already loads of places you can sell your property, and you're becoming an authority in the market. So how have you gone around customer acquisition? It's my day and night. That's all I think about, is how to get customers onto the platform in Dubai. So in Dubai, we have a very talented young girl. Her name is Olivia. Shout out to her. She's from the north, Newcastle. And she's on telesales. So she calls every day a bunch of agents and says, hi, we have this really cool new platform. She's actually perfected it. So she knows what to say given the person who's on the other end of the line. You can't do this generic cold calling. It just doesn't work. We've tried it. I've tried it myself. So that's our first way of customer acquisition. Cold call, set the appointment. Me and my team go in. So I have 2 co-founders. We go in, hopefully they have a TV. We hook up our MacBook and say, these are the advantages. We are 1/5 the price. You're going to get 6x more leads, but you have to start uploading more listings. That's the only way we can get traction. And we tell them that, look, we are a seed stage company. We need your feedback. So tell us what you like, what you dislike, and we'll build and iterate based on your feedback. That's our reason to be alive, residentThe. Yeah, that's a really cool way of doing it. Literally very hands-on, taking action. And what about retention? Because obviously, people buy a property and then they're not going to go back on it again for 2 or 3 years, maybe?
Great question. I think retention for the agent is really important. So there's, again, we're leveraging on where tech is today. There's something called Firebase, where we're looking at our daily, monthly active users. We use Hotjar to see how people are interacting with the website, what they click, heat maps and stuff like that. So we're paying attention to what they like and dislike on the listing app and on the website and on our TikTok app. But retention for users like yourself is, I suppose, there's something also which is lost, which is that casual browsing. A lot of people your age are kind of thinking, well, I want to move up in the world or get a bigger house or a nicer car, whatever it may be. And the way to do that is via TikTok or Instagram. But why not have a third app that actually, where you can make a call to action and say, I'm actually interested in this. Tell me more about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we wanted.
It's actually a great shout as well, because people do scroll on like Auto Trader, like I mentioned, or Rightmove. Like, I'm not necessarily looking at moving anywhere, but I'll have a quick look. And I guess I'm sort of live here trying to think about why I would use that app more often than not. And I guess it's because I'm a bit nosy.
Yeah.
I want to have a look around some lovely houses and some nice penthouses and the best places, but also just places that you could potentially put your stamp on.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's part of your sort of strategy of like building intrigue just around the scrolling sort of behavior of just
100%.
looking.
100%. That is exactly what, I mean, everyone is scrolling all the time. Why not scroll in something where you can actually make an action point? And I mean, it's a very casual, I'd invite you to check it out. It's a very casual sort of browsing experience. Instead of knowing where you want to buy, that was my pitch, was the right property finds you. So eventually you might find the right listing. Maybe you're not financially ready to buy it, but eventually, you can sort of, you
could even follow the agent.
Yeah, you could follow the agent.
Like we said, they can build their personal brand and become a person.
And very quickly, another plug is that each listing, so we'll have a proper profile for each agent. You can click the headshot, it'll go into a story. They'll have like a predefined story of who they are, what they've done, kind of give them a little bit more personality and color, so that you know who you're dealing with as well.
And then, if, like you said, you're we'll touch on it in a second, but if you can get across the UAE, the UK, and the US, you become that sort of information channel of like, there's so much trust in this company. It's fun. It's the new way to buy property. Yeah. It's such a cool way of doing it. Yeah. I wanted to touch on, and I'm going to keep bringing you back to sort of the whole tech side of stuff because it's so interesting. Because you are now backed by the world's most active pre-seed and seed investor and one of the most successful VCs in the world, right? Yeah. So what has it been like working with tech stars over in Chicago?
It was incredible. Yeah, so hopefully this can inspire others to do it, and I'm happy to help anyone that wants to get in. It's really hard. They have an acceptance rate of less than 1%. They told us it's harder to get into like Harvard than Techstars. But anyway, Techstars is, so there's Y Combinator through which Airbnb, Uber, DoorDash, a lot of big companies have graduated. Similarly, there's GridLink, there's TradingView that have graduated from Techstars. They're, as you say, one of the biggest pre-seed investors in the world. We got into the Chicago program. I tried really hard. So I got in on my third attempt, and it was tough. Would you like to know more about the application or the experience?
I think a little bit about both. The application is interesting for a lot of people. A lot of people will just be like, what does this mean? What does it mean to get into a sort of VC?
Okay, so generally, very high level, an accelerator program is like they invest money in you and they accelerate your business for 3 months. So they train you, they do workshops, you have to pitch at demo day, and they kind of explain how a startup should work. And no one has figured this out better than the US, right? So we're really lucky to get into the Chicago program. So we got in through a lot of trial and tribulation. And then I flew to Chicago in September for a week. And that was fun. And then it was like a week of workshops, get to know everyone, kind of what the next 3 months is going to be about. And then they go over everything. They go over SEO, SEM, legal, how to build your tech stack, how to use your backend, Amazon or GCP. They go from high level to very granular. But the most important lesson that they taught us, which is kind of lacking in Dubai, is jobs to be done, which is a very methodical way of looking at your problem. They're like, slow down. Especially in Dubai, you're always running around, you're kind of a hamster on a wheel. But they're like, slow down. What is the problem you're solving? Where is the switch of the customer from using the current solution that they use, because they're using something.
Yeah.
They're not just sitting around waiting for Viewit to come,
Yeah.
drop out of the sky. So what are they doing right now, and what is making them switch to the new way of doing things? What is that very specific psychological trigger that makes them switch? So that's what we learned, is like, go back to the drawing board, understand what you're doing, what your customer wants. And then the second most important lesson was, don't live in a vacuum. Talk to your customer, understand what they want, and iterate based on their feedback. That's super, super, super important for any startup. For any company, whether they're startup or big, continue to adapt to what the customer wants. So that's what we're doing.
And it's so cool because I first spoke to you. It must have been around that time. You were definitely in Chicago. We got put together because you were going to help us a little bit of our tech startup.
Yeah.
And we first spoke, and you were so... I guess what I'm trying to say is that they didn't just give you the information on how to do stuff. You had such a confidence that you still have now that I guess they also helped instill in you.
Yeah.
But you cannot fail if you come through Techstars or any of these really cool, amazing VCs and
No, you can fail. I mean,
sure, but
but your chances of survival are much higher now, because the half-life of a startup is very short. The resources, especially Dubai, is still it's a great city, but it's very nascent in this way. So the resources available to you are not that much, and you have to really look outside. And again, as I say, no one's figured it out like the US. But yes, I suppose, have a more... You have that, what's the word I'm looking for? You kind of have that validation that someone believes in you and sees your vision. And they really help you. They actually care, which is... hard to come by in our world. So it definitely gave us. And so we got into Techstars. There's 12 companies. We were the only non-American one. Everyone else was I think 10 of them was from Chicago, 2 were from New York, and we were the only Dubai company. Of all the companies that have come from the UAE, I think 15 companies have gone to Chicago. 13 of them have gone to Saudi. 1 has gone to New York, and we're the only other one that went to Chicago. So we're the only Dubai startup that's been to Techstars Chicago ever.
Wow.
And
so then when you're there, or now even, you come back, you've done that 3 months with them, got the investment. What's the sort of the process now? Do they need check-ins? Do they still offer support for you? How does it look?
I mean, it's kind of like, do your thing. We trust you. We've trained you. But yes, every quarter they have an investment associate that checks in. How much money have you spent? What's your burn like? What are you building? How much money have you made? Actually, that's the first question.
Of course,
Yeah, and that's the third most important thing was, you kind of, as a tech entrepreneur, you get stuck in dev hell. Like, you continue, you live in this vacuum. You want to keep building this cool thing, but it's only living in your computer. When they're like, build it, sell it today. Don't wait for tomorrow. Like, your life depends on it.
Yeah.
And they really were aggressive in that sense as well, which we needed, because we were kind of continuing these dev cycles that went on forever and ever and ever. Like, no, stop, sell, make money. There's no better validation than someone paying for your product.
Do you feel like when you speak to people who have very early stage tech startups now, and you have that level of understanding and sort of backing, that you can say, I can see the issues that I had, but also that you now have, and this is literally what they're going to tell you, which is do something.
100%. Yeah,
really?
Definitely. I try and remain humble. Like, I'm still learning just like everyone else, but definitely, like, these guys have figured it out, and they're trying to impart that knowledge to the rest of the people in the cohort. But I do see where people go wrong. I think one of them is dev cycle hell. Get out of it, sell, try and make money, try and keep and stay alive as much as you can. That's hard.
And what was the biggest thing that you learned in that 3 months? Was it 3 months literally every day in the office?
So the first week you go to Chicago.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You do the workshops, and they just want to get to know you. And then they took us to Wisconsin to this cabin, and we like partied over the weekend. It was super fun and cool. And then I came back, and then 3 months every day it's a Zoom.
Wow. Okay.
So we would work from like 9 in the morning to like 7 at night on the startup, and then normally from like 7 to sometimes 1 a.m. we'd have calls.
Wow.
So they had KPIs. So every week you had to share your KPIs, your data room, how much money you've made. And then they have workshops about legal and SEO and tech and so on and so forth. It was fun.
I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that kind of side of stuff, which is why we spoke and we met in the first place, right? So if you're thinking about launching some sort of tech startup, or maybe just a business that would benefit from investment, what do you think is the biggest piece of advice you could give to someone before they start applying for these different places?
Yeah. Have a product ready, get some traction, if you're making money, there's nothing better better than that. But have a product ready, have some traction. Even if you're early and you don't have money coming in, as long as you can show that it's doing something, like people are using it, downloading it, engaging with it. And understand your KPIs, like all the questions you've asked, retention, users, and so on. If you know these terms, and you can show that your app or your platform does this, then that's a good thing.
And then how did you know that you wanted to take on investment?
We needed money. I mean, I was funding the whole thing. So we needed to continue to grow. Thankfully, now our burn is very low because, as I mentioned, we have interns, very talented interns, Iftikhar, Hamdan, shout out to them, great guys. And my team is great, Abdullah, Nasher as well. And, we're really focused on this mission to get this thing done. But how do we know we needed investment was, we need to we need to continue to push the product, get it in people's hands and make money. So now we're not cash flow positive, but we are generating revenue in both the markets.
That's awesome. So, that's the main thing, right? That's what Techstars wanted.
Yeah. They want to see bigger growth. One of our cohort members, his name is Edward, excellent guy. He's got something called Echo Labs. Very quickly, he has built a transcription device that's 90% accurate. So it can watch us talk. Wow. And you'd imagine that YouTube has this, right? That's your first, why is he building this? But not to the accuracy that he's built it. So he was literally at idea stage. He's raised on seed $7.7 million. Wow. And he's the highest, it's the highest raise in Chicago history. He is 20 years old.
No way.
And his co-founder he's 19. He just turned 20 during program, and the co-founder is 20. They're kids. They're like, I don't know, like, what am I going to do with all this money?
And he literally just like
$7.7 million.
But he started coding when he was young, or how did he?
Yeah, he started coding when he was young. His backstory is incredible. He's such a cool guy. He started when he's like 15, and
they can see the application
and machine learning.
Machine learning, wow.
Yeah.
But then I guess the application for that is billions of dollars in revenue at some point.
So his first customer was University of Chicago, and then he's doing some other universities, and then his vision is to go to Netflix and YouTube, and
course.
We all tried to get in on his seed round, but we couldn't do it. But he's going to the moon. Oh, really? Echo Labs, look out for them.
Echo Labs, wow. Okay, so that's a really good example though. So if you get 7.7 million, and has he got a team? Or how big?
Yeah, he's got. That's a good question. I think he's got one other. It's all tech, but he's such a great. He's a very good orator. He killed it in demo day as well.
Oh wow.
But the model they've built is just these two guys and one other guy. And that's it. So now they need money to market and sell it to these bigger institutions like universities.
So then how would Techstars be like, okay, you've raised a lot of money here.
Yeah.
Do they keep a closer eye on them? Do they ask them to bring in like a CFO or a COO? How does that work?
No, that's a very good question. They don't really care. They trust you. Yeah. So far, I mean, it's only been a month we've been out of program, or a month and a half, but they trust you to make the right decisions. They've trained you, but they will check in because they have 6% equity in all of our companies. Mm-hmm. So they're, they want to know how their investment is doing. They're a business at the end of the day, but they don't ask you to get a CFO or a CMO. They will advise you. So Edward we all got a lot of advice on what specifically we should do for our business to help it to grow and to scale. And they don't, another thing with Techstars is, yes, you can say, I just want to be local in my market, but they're interested in the TAM, in the total addressable market. Yeah. They want to see the big vision.
And I imagine they want you to, at some point, go to the US because the market there is just...
I mean, that's our dream.
Insane.
People have told us we're crazy to think that, but, we were crazy to get to this point, so we'll see. It's the US market is very... so one statistic I know by heart is Illinois, the state of Illinois is 12.5 million people, and the GDP of that one state is $1 trillion.
Wow.
As a comparison, UAE's GDP, please forgive me if I'm wrong, is $450 billion, which is very impressive. But that one state is $1 trillion. Like the US is a $22 trillion economy. So it's a behemoth. It's huge. And to want to get into to penetrate that real estate market that is so monopolized by Zillow and Trulia and Redfin and Homes.com and Apartment.com is tough. But in my defense, we are not. So agents in Dubai, and for the most part, we don't have data to support this, but everyone in the world are portal agnostic. So they'll list anywhere they get a lead. They'll put it on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Property Finder, Rightmove, whatever. So they don't care. It's only when you start to become a problem for the bigger portals where they're like, this guy's annoying me now. Either I'm going to buy him out or I'm going to do this, copy him. So
well, that's a bit like, I'm just linking it to someone who's done that recently, is the Prime energy drink, right?
Oh yeah.
So they grew so quickly that people tried to buy them out that were their competitors, but it was too late. They were already going to the moon, and you can't slow them down. So I guess that's the sort of momentum you've got to build in silence and then go, poof, we're here.
Yeah.
Actually, I've got one last question for you, which is actually about whenever you look at buying a property, I think, speak for lots of people, like to see the history of that property and also that area. How does Viewit help with that kind of thing, like the back? Or maybe that's not a thing in Dubai. But I'm talking about the backstory of property.
That's such a good point. That is not such a thing in Dubai. Like the oldest freehold development is what, since 2005? So
not old. So
20 odd years old, 18, 20 years old. But I suppose the agent could explain that in the story. So like in London, Kensington, or these very old areas,
of course,
there's so much history in those stucco kind of houses. The agent could, and you can't do that with pictures.
No, exactly.
So video is kind of that misstep. We're not, whenever we pitch, we say we're not a revolution, we're simply the evolution. So everything went from Facebook, which I think it is today, like the platforms you see today are like Facebook in 2012, like I said, search bar, happy family in the back, and then you go. And then on the other hand, you have TikTok and you have Instagram. There was a middle bit that got lost. We're just trying to fit in there. And then everyone also always says, well, why don't you do Matterport or 3D or VR and all this kind of stuff? Yeah, that stuff is great. In fact, 7.3% of listings on Zillow are Matterport, are those 3D tours. That was meant to be the second coming, but it didn't turn out to be that because less than 10% use it. And it's not scalable. While it is great technology, I love it, but it's not. You don't have it on your phone, and that's how you interact with the world. So anyway, just to conclude on this, is that video is that sort of slight misstep in history, and we're trying to plug that in.
I love it. Farhan, it's been an absolute pleasure learning about all this and speaking to you. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.